So such a warm welcome to you all. Wonderful to have so many of you here on the live, and welcome to those who are joining on the replay to this beautiful release class with the theme of moving through freeze and also functional freeze, which sound the same, but they are a little bit different, and we'll explain that briefly in a moment. I've just made the announcement, but for those who are on replay or just joining us, I forgot to mention we do need paper and pens, so if you could grab a hold of at least 2 types of pens, markers, pencils, crayons, whatever you've got, and some paper. You might also like to have with you a drink or a hot drink. And it's also going to be really nice to have a blanket and a space on the floor somewhere where you can lay out and hopefully not be disturbed by anyone. Is always nice. For those who are new to somatic work or to these release classes, this class in particular, we will have both a cognitive and somatic portion. So we'll be looking at some of the science and what's really going on from that brain-based perspective, what's happening in the nervous system. We'll do that briefly, and then we'll move into some practices. Some of our classes are entirely free-flowing and quite movement-based. This one's very, very gentle, given the nature of the topic of freeze we're working with, very floor-based, minimal movement. And what I'm going to do a little bit differently this time is actually, before we do each practice, I'm going to introduce you to some of the science behind the practice. And it's not something I do in every class. Often we just flow through tools, and they are what they are, and we just kind of all trust that they're doing something for our nervous system. Today, however, I do want to give you a little bit of the science, and one of the reasons I want to do that is because I want to get our cognitive minds kind of buy-in and permission into this work. I think many of us identify with being intellectualizers. In fact, if you're here on the live and you are an intellectualizer, do a little emoji in the chat or put your hand up or something to let me know. I'm one of these people, and this is where we really want to know the science and the why and the meaning, and we have to think it through. This is why I act like this, and we want those aha moments. We want those light bulbs. Lots of you are identifying with this. So I'm going to feed that part of you today as well, hopefully give that a little bit of nourishment. And by doing that, get its buy-in and permission to go into some of these practices, which, especially those of us who are newer to somatic work, or we're kind of just checking it out and questioning it, it really helps us to understand why we're doing these practices that can sometimes seem a little bit interesting or a little bit woo-woo if we're kind of new to the work. Right, so I'm just gonna, one moment before. Okay, so just before we do then, let's just kind of put some context around the class today, the theme that we're working through. We won't take a really long time here because I do think a lot of us here know quite a bit about the nervous system already. But what we're working today with is the freeze response, or the functional freeze response. So to get a little understanding for me as well, who here in the live, if you can pop something in the chat again, is here because you're actively in a freeze or functional freeze response in your life right now, versus who's here because they know they can go there sometimes, or they're just kind of checking it out. Okay, so some of us are in there right now. So briefly, as we know, the nervous system, our autonomic nervous system, controls all those amazing automatic functions in our body, like our respiratory rate, our heart rate, our breathing, controls our digestion, all of these wonderful things, and it also controls our stress and threat responses, and it's very involved in that. And this autonomic nervous system has these 2 branches. So we have our sympathetic branch, which we often refer to as fight or flight. So this is quite a lot of movement towards high activation, and we'll find ourselves feeling anxious or angry in that place. So this is what happens when we feel under stress, and often we go to that place first. unless we maybe have a trauma history that diverts us very quickly into freeze. The other branch of the nervous system is the parasympathetic nervous system, which originally we sort of always referred to as rest, digest, and restore, and kind of that calm place that we know in our body, but it's a little bit more nuanced than that. And our parasympathetic nervous system branches off into two branches of its own. Our ventral vagal, you see it there in the green, which is the calm, rest, digest, restore, creativity, feeling focused, feeling safe, social connection. And then we have the other part of that parasympathetic system, dorsal vagal. This is the freeze response. This is the full freeze response, and that is a spectrum of its own. So when we freeze, it's our body saying, do you know what? The stress is too much. I've held too much for too long, and I'm completely outside my capacity to cope with the level of threat that I feel under. So when we're in dorsal vagal, it's actually an immobilization response. So on the extreme end of the scale, this is collapse, and this is fainting. And then it sort of moves its way through into more depression and feeling quite stuck. Grief and shame often live here. We feel detached or even dissociated. We don't even feel like we're in our body. Sometimes things don't feel real. All of this, of course, is a protective mechanism, serving a function there to keep us safe. And then this sort of scale of freeze moves then into this more functional freeze, which is where many of us find ourselves living our lives. So before I briefly explain what that is in the nervous system, and I've used this kind of example before, many people resonate with it, so let me know if you do. But how it often shows up, this functional freeze in our life, is by sort of flicking back and forward between sympathetic and freeze, or having this awful blended state of the two. We wake up in the morning and we feel like we just don't want to get out of bed. We're pressing snooze on the alarm clock. And then by that point, when we've pressed snooze 8 times, we realize we're running late. That's when we get that kind of surge of sympathetic energy, like, oh shit, I've done it again. I've got to get up. I've got to get ready. I've got to get to work. And it's enough to get you out of bed. And then you race around the morning, and it's not a very functional state when we're racing and we're rushing and we're snapping at the kids to hurry up and get in the car, and we're doing all of that. Often in the car, we might space out. We get to work, we may plaster on our kind of work mask, smile, but stressed, but get through the day. And then there's that collapse again in the evening when we get home and we're doom scrolling, or we just kind of really, really feel like we are absolutely just pushing uphill to get dinners done. But then we often don't actually go to bed early. Even though we've been so tired, we get to bed and we're really tired but wired. So if that's sort of resonating, that's a really common functional freeze presentation of swinging back and forward between the two, but also experiencing them both at the same time. So it feels like shut down, lack of motivation, feeling stuck that comes with a freeze or a dorsal state, but it's also layered in with that kind of quite nasty sense of rushing, needing, I must do this, I should be doing this, and the stress energy of a sympathetic state. So these are really common things that we see. It often is a result of having a lot of chronic stress, unprocessed stress, maybe trauma, the body basically saying, do you know what, we've been holding too much for too long. And we can really find ourselves kind of leading into burnout as a result of this. So there's a little hit of science for our brains that want to know what on earth is going on in our nervous system. Your nervous system is trying to protect you, actually, but of course it's very, very tricky to live from these states. And so what we need is both a brain and body-based approach to gently lift ourselves out of this. This is why neither one on their own necessarily works. And it especially doesn't work if you try to mindset yourself out of this. If you're just kind of berating yourself for being lazy, there's often a real lack of self-compassion that happens. It's just the nature of being outside of our ventral vagal state. So we can expect our thought patterns to be quite shifted. And we can't just change those. We can't just decide, I'm going to think differently. I'm going to tell myself to get going. I need to be positive. It just isn't going to do it, because what's happening at a deeper level is your nervous system doesn't feel safe. And it potentially has trauma that it needs some processing through. I'm going to just take these slides away. Okay, here we go. So if you'd like to, what you can do now on a scale of 1 to 10, you can drop this in the chat, is just rate how deeply into a freeze state you feel in this moment. So 1 is I'm as frozen as can be, and 10 is I am totally calm and regulated. So we're going to kind of just take a little check-in. Where are we at? If you're finding yourself that you are quite low, so close to a 1, it's okay not to do everything. You may also find yourself struggling to identify certain emotions or feelings in your body. It's the nature of freeze that we slightly detach. So I want to normalize that for you, in the sense of there's nothing wrong with you if you have an experience like that during this class. I also want to say that whilst today's class is very gentle, and we're just working to gently create safety and upregulation, if at any point something overwhelms you, you start to feel really outside of your capacity, your window of tolerance, this is your cue. I'm listening to my body, you listen to yours, and I can't tell if that's happening for you. So if you start to notice that, you just pop up. You can mute me if you want, you can walk away, you can take a drink, get yourself a cup of tea, just stop the practice. Okay, so we've done the slides, we've done the science, we have arrived. Let's take a seat somewhere cozy. You can lie down if that would be more comfortable for you too. And might be nice, if you are seated, that you can just feel some kind of supports. So right now I don't have a back support, but if you've got something to lean on, that can be really lovely. Right now I'm just going to use my seat as my support, my kind of anchor. Let's take a couple of breaths here just to drop into the space. We've just been very much in our heads, and our cognitive brains have been kind of wired on, turned on a little bit. Or maybe they've been totally spacing out because that was way too much science. So let's just drop into the body. Nice, easy way to do this when we are feeling a bit disconnected or a bit stuck is just to simply notice gravity's effect on the body. Noticing the contact points of your body with the surface beneath you. You might be noticing your glutes, thighs, or calves in contact. Maybe your back is pressed against something, or perhaps you're noticing your hands rested on your knees or in your lap. And how about your breath? What's your breath doing in this moment? We're not going to put any judgment on there. We don't even need to change that just yet. Let's just simply greet it. Maybe noticing whether it's shallow or high up into the chest, or whether there's some movement into the belly. And what can you hear? Just tuning into some sounds around you and my voice. Sounds in the room, maybe you can hear things outside. And what we're doing here is just beginning to orient to the present, creating a bit of a safe container just to orient to the space that you're in right now. It really helps our nervous system to feel safer in this moment. So go ahead and take a glance around your environment and your space, and just allow your eyes to be drawn to things in the room that feel like they might feel safe or neutral, or they bring you a little bit of joy. I always find my eyes landing on plants or pets or textures that I like the look of. We're just giving our nervous system the opportunity here to notice a bit of safety, notice where we are, and counteract any dissociation. And then while we're here, arriving and anchoring, let's just say hello to that part of us that is experiencing a layer of freeze, stuckness or lack of motivation, bit spacey, bit disconnected. Just noticing, okay, that part's here with us to whatever degree. You might even notice where that is in your body. We don't have to intellectualize that either. We can just say, this is a sensation I'm noticing right now. This is where my attention is drawn in my body. Noticing like a heaviness or a stiffness or a funny feeling in your tummy, just kind of like, yeah, that's where that part lives right now. And just acknowledging and greeting that part. We're going to do a little work with that part today. And it might even feel safe to you just to let this part know, or to communicate with it, hey, we're not going to have you taking over. I don't want you to overwhelm me. Just want to work with you a little bit to see if I can create a little bit of safety for you. And if any resistance to this is coming up, this idea of working with freeze, that's just another part, another protective part of you. Just take notice of that. Just greet the resistance. Ask it if it can step aside. Let it know we just want to do a little bit of work with freeze today. We're going to move now into a vagal drill. Our vagus nerve, as we know, is that amazing nerve that connects from the base of our brain to most of the organs in our body and is a two-way communication highway between brain and body, with most of those nerve fibers running from body to brain. Communicates our level of safety, communicates the state of our body. And this is why body work can be so powerful. So we're going to engage that vagus nerve a little bit here with a very simple vagal drill, couple of them. So let's start by just warming our hands. Kind of maybe rubbing them together, almost as though we're warming them over a campfire. I kind of like the visual of that because we're like thawing out our freeze response a little bit. And then I'll just show you what we're going to do first, because you might not be able to hear me so well when you're doing it. I'm going to ask you to stop this in a moment, and then we're going to cup our hands over our ears, and you're going to take 5 straw breaths. Deep inhale through the nose, exhaling through pursed lips like a straw. All right, so let's do that together. Cupping the ears, breathing in, exhale. You can do this in your own time, inhaling as you're ready. And exhaling slow and steady as though you're breathing out through a straw. 3 more in your own time. As you complete your fifth and final breath, you can remove your hands from your ears. Take a moment just to feel into your body, feel the response. What did your nervous system think of that? Continuing to engage some of this vagus nerve, and actually we're going to move into engaging our cranial nerves here. We're going to start by tapping, and there's no rule to this, around your chin, jaw, cheeks, and then around your lips. And so you can play. You might like to kind of have little piano fingers that are going at different rates, different times they're tapping, or you might like to take a couple of fingers or all of them tapping in rhythm together and just have a little play. We're doing it pretty gently, but you can try the pressure a little harder and just see what does that feel like, and then go a little softer. And so I notice sometimes I need more pressure. I quite like something that's quite deep pressure and squeezing and more force, and other times I like things to be really gentle, and that changes often depending on the state of my nervous system and what it needs. So we have lots of little cranial nerves that link to the vagus nerve, just providing real gentle neural stimulation to shift out of shutdown. We just think about, as you're tapping here, the needs that this frozen part, this stuck part has. You could even ask it in this moment, hey, frozen part, what do you need? What do you need from me? What do you want me to know? Often this part has needs to slow down, to feel safe. It really wants to not be overridden all the time. You can tap down your neck here as well, if that feels good. It wants not to be pushed through. Maybe it's saying, I'm trying to protect you. I've been just doing too much, holding too much for too long. You can take that, you can pause that when you're ready and just notice. Just giving ourselves an opportunity by pausing after each practice, just to see what the nervous system thought of that. So you might just tune into the body and just notice, do I feel more settled? Do I feel a little bit more upregulated? Do I feel more activated and I don't like that? Do I feel just tingling sensations, just tuning in? We're going to take one VU breath together because I just adore a VU breath. And if you haven't done one before, it's something I wanted you to have in your toolkit. The reason we do VU is because, well, there's so many, and I'll share a few now, given that science. We're engaging our vocal cords. And often our vocal cords can come quite offline, especially in a freeze response. So when we fawn or when we freeze, quite often we find that our voice becomes quite shut down. Often the prosody and the tone of it changes. And so by using our voice, not only do we bring that aspect back online, so moving towards ventral vagal, but also the VU gently vibrates our vocal cords, and our vagus nerve runs down past the larynx and pharynx. So we're able to kind of vibrate against it, and it also has a deep resonance into the belly. Our vagus nerve is connected there too. The other reason is it helps you, if you find it tricky, to really engage your diaphragm with a beautiful long exhale. So that diaphragmatic engagement activates the vagus nerve. It's directly connected to the diaphragm. It also creates a bit of micro movement internally. So it's so simple. Most of you know how to do it. We inhale, and then on the exhale, we make the sound VOO. So VOO, deep resonant sound. Really allow it to reverberate through your body and feel into that. We can do it together. So let's all inhale and exhale. Ooh. Sit with the silence. Notice the reverb in your body. In the chat, if you'd like to do a midway check-in, you're welcome to drop a number, 1 to 10, if you notice any shift. There's no doing it right or wrong, and this isn't a test. You don't have to have moved. And you might even like to put your first number and now your second. So 1 is very stuck and frozen, and 10 is really calm. So you'll find like if you've moved down, you're moving more into freeze, but if you've moved up, you're moving out of freeze, if that makes sense. Okay. So it looks like there's been some movement up for some people and perhaps some moving down into freeze a little bit more. So if that's the case and you're noticing that, it could be that, oh no, maybe some people have realized they've done the numbers around the other way. That's okay. If you are feeling a bit frozen, what you might like to do is some tapping along your body, some more breath. If you're kind of moving into too much calm and getting kind of moving down the ladder, you might like to tap and shake and just kind of upregulate a little. And then what we're going to do now is just move into a space on the floor, if you've got access to that. So we're going to start with a little bit of pandiculation, and then we're going to move with some grounded movements before we get our pen and paper out. So to give you the science then before we begin into the pandiculation piece, do you know when you wake up in the morning and you're feeling like you've just kind of, and you do this big stretch and it almost takes over, your body just shudders and it just feels like it just intuitively, just everything tenses and opens and then releases. Do you know what I mean? Or is that, was that a really bad example? I'm seeing a couple of head nods. So pandiculation is that instinctive stretching that the body does, and it's actually a really instinctive regulation. And so what we're going to do is we'll play just really briefly with pandiculation to mimic the body's natural way of waking itself up from freeze and releasing some muscular tension. And what it also plays with, for those of us who just love a bit of science, is proprioception. And so that is kind of about your body's awareness of where it is in space. And it's also about being able to feel pressure and deep pressure into joints and into muscles. So proprioception is one of my favorite regulation tools. I am deeply settled by deep input and proprioceptive stuff. So let me know in the chat actually if you are too. It might be that you just love massage. You find yourself always tucking your feet up under you. Like when you sit, you're always kind of like getting that pressure into your body. You love crunchy stuff. You love a good squeeze. You might even find that pressing into yourself feels really good. So this is proprioception. So it's just another one of our senses. So we've got our proprioceptive system, just like we have a vestibular system, which is more about movement and involves the inner ear. So we will come to find a spot lying down. And if you want to increase your proprioception and proprioceptive input, grab something that you can put on your body as well. I love to have like a hot water bottle or a wheat bag in these moments. But actually, if you've just got like a pillow or a blanket, often that is just enough to create a little extra layer of safety in practices like this. If you're someone as well who ever like does a yoga class, and you want to do hip opening, or you find yourself feeling a little bit exposed and vulnerable when you're in like a butterfly, or when you're lying down in Shavasana or any supine positions, if you actually bring a blanket to class, that can be really, really soothing. It kind of creates that feeling of safety and containment for your body. So just having something that you can place to feel a little bit of pressure and weight off it. So what we'll do is just a really instinctive kind of stretching thing here by contracting and releasing parts of the body. So take a lie down. I've got a pillow, but you don't need one. And if you've got your rug, you're welcome to have that on you. And just tune into your body for a moment here, lying down on your back, and just noticing contact points of your back with the floor beneath you. Gravity's just doing its job. Muscles are relaxed. And I want you just to feel into, just to see if we can say hello to our intuition here. Some of us are very connected to it. Others are like, what on earth is an intuition? That's fine wherever you are on the spectrum. By the way, you can totally work on intuition and hone it. But just see if there's anywhere in your body right now that's calling for a stretch, and my legs are begging for it. And wherever it's calling for it, I want you to stretch it out and bring in as much muscular tension as you can. Hold it for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and let it all go. Whatever stretch you had, let it release. Feel into your body. Just see if there's anywhere else that's calling. I can feel now my arms and shoulders, so I'm going to reach up to the ceiling as if I'm stretching for the morning, and then hold for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let it all go. Feeling into the body again, checking out if there's anywhere else that wants a little bit of this pandiculation. Now, one that I love is actually tilting the pelvis. So if you'd like to do your own thing and you've got somewhere that's calling for it, go for it. Otherwise, if you could imagine your pelvis here as like a bowl of water, and then you wanted to tip the water backwards towards your face. So what you would do is tuck your tailbone and very gently tilt the pelvis. And what can feel really good as well with this, if you want to do a little bit of pelvis stuff, is just to bring your feet flat on the floor and have your knees point to the ceiling. And then just tilt your pelvis by tucking your tailbone towards the ceiling. Let's hold. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Release. We're back to neutral. If you'd like, you can go the other way. So now, arching your back gently, we're tipping the water the other way. Holding for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Back to neutral. If you've got anywhere else in your body now that wants to have a stretch, just go ahead and allow yourself to intuitively have a little stretch. You might feel called to some windshield wipers. You might want to put your hands above your head. And quite often our body does tell us what it wants to do, and our intuition tells us what it wants through the body, but we don't listen. Have you ever felt that feeling like you're just desperate to give someone a cuddle, but you don't? You really want to cry, but you hold it back. You really want that thing to eat, but you say no. That's intuition. That craving, that feeling, that urge is the body speaking. Get out any more movements, and when you're ready, come to lying still. Let's have a little check-in with that frozen part and just see how it's feeling about all of this, how it's responding to this movement. As you feel ready, with as little effort as possible, roll to one side and press yourself up. And we're going to come into 4-point kneeling, or all fours position. And what we'll do in this movement, in this position, sorry, is just create a little bit more movement again through the spine, waking up the spine. Often when we're in a freeze or functional freeze, there's a kind of instinctive turning inwards of the body, and we find ourselves with our head a little heavier, our shoulders a little rounder, our spine a little more curved. It's a natural response, a postural response of a freeze response. We can play with opening that up and sending that signal of openness, expansion. So with your hands directly below your shoulders and your knees below your hips, you might like to just really gently pull the belly button to spine so that we're not totally sinking in. And we can create a nice line down the back, just holding here for a moment. And then we're going to do a little bit of cross-body movement here. So if you're able, I want you to see if you can kind of crawl, but go sideways just a couple of bits. And then back the other way. And you can even allow one hand to cross over the midline. I'll tell you the science of this soon as well, so you don't feel like I'm making you do something completely mad. It's always interesting when someone walks in on me when I'm doing one of these things. And then have a play with coming back to your 4-point kneeling, and extend your right leg long behind you and your left hand forward. Just having a play with the balance here. Maybe you could bring them out or cross them over the midline, just having a little play with balance, a little play with this cross body movement, and then coming to the other side. I promise this is as hard as it gets. This is as much movement as we're going to do today. Just having a little play. And then as you're ready, coming back through center, and maybe you want to take a couple of cat-cows. Inhaling to look up, opening through the chest, tailbone to sky. Exhaling, drawing in through the belly button, chin tucks, rounding through the spine. Maybe just start to take that movement really intuitively. Maybe some kind of barrel rolls. Just waking up the body. Right, you're welcome to carry on if that's feeling really, really good, or whenever you're ready, you can come back. So those cross lateral movements, what they can help us to do is really do a brain-body reconnection, but it's very low load engagement. So it helps us to come out of freeze in a very non-threatening way. When we do anything that's bilateral or cross body, we also help to engage both hemispheres of the brain. Okay, beautiful. Let's take a little containment hold just to close the somatic portion before we move into pen and paper work. I'm going to tuck one hand under the armpit and wrap the other hand over, a little safety hug. Close your eyes if that feels good for you. And come into your breath. If you'd like to, you're welcome to do a check-in again if something feels it's shifted. You can do that with a number, you can do that with a word, just kind of checking in about what's my nervous system doing right now? How's it responding to this movement, pandiculation, the cross body? Just kind of getting curious again. And then, as you feel ready, we're going to get our paper. Cross-body stuff feels good, Sandy says. Wonderful. Love it. Containment hug got me feeling. It's always okay in these classes if you find yourself yawning, tummy gurgling, lots of swallows, more saliva, tears. All of those things are very, very normal releases, responses, signs of ventral vagal activation, vagus nerve activation. All of that stuff is really, really normal and actually quite wonderful. Good sign that your body's responding. But I also want to say it's also very, very normal to have the experience in classes like this at times to feel like you just can't drop into it. You feel a bit disconnected or even frustrated with the pace of it. And sometimes that just lets us know there's a part of us that's saying, I don't actually feel safe to maybe do practices that could have an impact on nervous system or release emotions or something like that. So I just want you to know if you're like, thinking in your head right now, Bex, hurry up, or I can't be bothered, or this is boring, feeling resistant. There's just a part of you that is being very protective and it is welcome here. And, maybe next time it might take a seat on the side and just watch safely from the sidelines. Okay. So we're going to begin with just a pen, just one for the first bit, and we'll do your dominant hand. So I'm right-handed, except when I eat, and then I'm left-handed. Is anyone else like that? Is that just me? Is anyone else like is it ambidextrous? I feel like I just saw someone's hand go up. Eleanor, are you left-handed when you eat? That's so funny. Okay, Julie is also like that. Okay, so if you're right-handed, pens in your right hand. If you are left-handed, pens in the left. And we're going to start just by holding it in front of you somewhere, the pen and paper. If it feels like you are able to connect more to your parts or to your body with your eyes shut, shut your eyes for a moment. Otherwise, just take a second here and see if you can locate in your body. It could be freeze if that's still the most present, but there may be another emotion or sensation that's more present now. You don't even have to be able to name the emotion. Just want you to locate in your body. What is it that's calling for your attention the most? Where is your attention drawn to? What sensation in the body is that? And then you can begin to draw that on the paper. And you can have your eyes shut while you draw, or you can open them and totally allow your thinking mind just to take a break and switch off for a second here. This cannot be wrong. And you can also use words. So just start to draw the sensation in your body. You may notice shapes or particular types of lines that you're drawn to, and it could be that the lines are very sharp with points and they're jagged, or maybe they're very flowing and you're noticing a lot of curves. Just carry on, just let the pen do its thing without too much thought. You might notice whether you're drawing shapes or symbols, whether words are flowing. whether the lines are long and flowing or whether they're short. It doesn't have to make sense. Take another 30 seconds or so here, just to continue drawing your sensation. It may morph and change as you go. Bringing that practice to a close as you feel ready. And now what we're going to do is we're going to draw the breath. And there's a couple of different ways that you could do this. So I'll just demonstrate and just see what you feel drawn to, or try them both. So one is that, and we've done this before in a class, is that we draw the inhale as a line going up. The exhale going down. And we just simply go along like that. The other one that you might experiment with is coming onto your back, because some of us find it really hard to do any type of extended breath when we're seated. So that's something to do with how our diaphragm is holding tension, but we can access diaphragmatic breathing when we're on our backs more easily. So come to your back if you want to. I'm just going to demonstrate, then you have a pick or play with both. We're going to place it on the belly. And then as we inhale, we'll draw around the circle one way. As we exhale, we'll reverse the circle and go the other. And you literally here can now follow your belly as it rises and falls. So we'll have like a bunch of circles going up and down. Whichever one you choose, we're going to do this with your non-dominant hand. So I move my pen to the left. So you might want to try them both, and I'm just going to leave you to experiment for a minute or so, 2 minutes at max here. Oops, non-dominant hand. Take another minute or so. And we'll start to finish up there with one more exercise to do with our pens and paper. And then I'm going to just allow some space for us to share. It might be that you want to share your breath pattern. It might be that you have questions, might be that you want to share your experience. So the last one, we're going to use both pens. So we need the 2 pens and 1 in each hand. And this is another version of our cross hemisphere, bilateral stimulation, bilateral drawing. You can take a pen in each hand. I wish there was a way I could show you this more easily. And we're just going to start to draw at the same time. And you can choose whether you draw a circle or whether you draw figure of 8s. And as you're doing this, you may feel called again to sort of sync your breath with the pattern you're drawing. Welcome to deviate and do different things if your brain's calling. It's like both hemispheres are kind of mirroring one another. And then, as you're ready, you might need a new piece of paper for this. And this is going to seem completely bizarre for a moment. Your left hand, or your, what am I trying to say? Your non-dominant hand is going to draw what freeze feels like. And then your dominant hand is going to draw a future unstuck version of you, what that feels like. This does not have to make any sense. All you need to know is your non-dominant hand is representing freeze, and your dominant hand is representing flow. Freeze and flow, and they're both going to move at the same time. So come to your paper again and start to draw that out. And your brain's going to be really, really thinking and trying to figure out what on earth is going on. And this is a much harder cross hemisphere. Oh, lovely. You can take as much time as you need to carry on and finish. I don't know how this happened, but I feel like I drew a face with my left hand. A very abstract face. So if anyone would like to share any of their little creations, if anyone would like to ask a question, to share their experience of moving. Oh, hang on. I'm gonna pin this super quick. There we go. There's Helen. I don't know how you managed to do that two at the same time. And also, if anyone wants to speak to their drawing or their experience, just unmute or request to unmute. Actually, I think I need to do like allow you to. There you go. You're allowed to unmute. So if anyone wants to speak to their creation or speak to their experience of class.
Mine's the one on this side, that's the freeze state.
Yeah, wow.
And this is the flow state.
That is amazing.
That's how my brain feels when I'm in freeze.
It's amazing how sort of tight and contracted and dark that one is compared to how expansive, like the space of the other one and the flow of the lines. Yeah, wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. Does anyone else want to either share anything that they've done in their drawing, or just ask a question or share their experience of, the somatic practices today? I may not be able to see you if you've got your video wanting to share a drawing, so you're welcome just to start talking.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the video is not working, but my freeze is like lines up and down and like really tight squiggles. And my flow was like a affinity symbol that just went round and round and round like a racetrack.
It sounds like
Yeah,
someone else is
round,
liking the racetrack idea.
yeah, round and round. My little 1-year-old, she's also been drawing.
Oh, beautiful to do that together in co-regulation. That's really stunning.
Yeah, it was really nice.
Yeah,
Well,
thank
she
you
was
for
kind of
sharing.
like my weight.
Yeah, she was your proprioceptive input. Thank you for sharing that. I just see Tamara said, my inner family really liked the mirroring drawing with both hands, and Janine said same. Would anyone else like to share their experience or ask a question?
Could I ask a question?
Yes, of course, welcome.
I'm Barb, by the way. I wasn't able to do the chat very well. My freeze was just still, nothing. So is that done right? Or,
When you
I
say your
mean,
freeze was nothing, sorry, do you mean the drawing, or?
yeah, the drawing, sorry.
So you
Uh,
mean nothing came out, like,
yeah, no, like just staying in one spot is maybe I wasn't interpreting correctly, or that's what it felt like.
there's never a misinterpretation. When you felt like it was staying in one spot, what did that feel like to you?
Um, Emotion-wise
Yeah,
or energy?
emotions or in your body or any thoughts
Oh,
that
I
you
think
noticed?
just scared probably, and no, yeah, just scared, I think. Just, I mean, frozen,
Yeah,
I guess.
sure.
Yeah.
And did you notice that when you were doing, did your other hand do anything with flow, with the more?
Oh, yeah, that was quite flow. I would show, but these are very tiny. So, but yeah, no, that was very flowing.
Okay.
Then figure eight circles, but that's sort of how I interpreted it, and it just didn't want to move.
Mm-hmm. That makes complete and total sense to me. Mm-hmm. I mean, how incredibly representative of a freeze response that your hand would refuse to even move. Like, and interestingly, when you talk about, okay, what did you notice, thoughts, sensations, etc. wise with that, you notice the fear, the part that feels afraid. You notice it feels unmoving. And also, even the question that comes up coming from around freeze is like, is this right? Like, am I doing this right? We question ourselves, we don't know. And not knowing is really common in a freeze state as well. I just don't know. I don't know what to do. I feel stuck. I'm not moving. So totally representative of your experience right now, and mirroring that in your, this is confusing, or is this right? And being mirrored or actual experience of the exercise as well. And yet the flow hand was able to feel something there and kind of come into some level of movement. So that's beautiful.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Sandy said, I love the pen and paper exercises. I'm finding asking my right brain to join the party lately has been so helpful. And Carmen asks, is it possible to come out of functional freeze? So I'll speak to that briefly in terms of what it is we need when we're coming out of freeze or functional freeze. So functional freeze, as we know, has that combination of dorsal, vagal, and sympathetic. So there's a lot of the stress energy, potentially feeling anxious or angry, while also feeling stuck. And then pure freeze would feel maybe more down the line of stuck or depression, or just really unmotivated. You may flow between the two. So it's very, very possible to come out of them. I would say that I could never say this is how long it would take, or this is exactly what you should do to come out of it, because it'll be different for everyone. And if someone's experience of it is actually a burnout, it can take us a wee while to regulate our way out of that. With both of them, what I would say is that we want to work on, focus on creating a sense of safety. So we want to work on things that feel safe, help us have experiences of feeling safe and connected to our body and in our body. And they are often in micro moments. You know, some people are able to sit and do something like this for a full hour and they have, you know, they feel quite embodied and they come out feeling quite safe. Other people can do 30 seconds at a time, and that's fine too. So that's a tool we use. We pendulate, we move between safety and dysregulation. So we focus really on creating safety in the body through the language of the body, through somatic and nervous system work and vagal practices. And then, of course, as we start to feel that safety, we're going to bring in upregulation, so starting to generate more energy. We're going to bring in gentle movement, and we start to bring in the brain and the rewiring that happens there. So that's a typical kind of, this is what we'd have to do. Foundations, safety, upregulation. And for those in functional freeze, there may be a time of actually working with the sympathetic energy, because as we upregulate, we often move into sympathetic, finding ourselves feeling angry or anxious and wondering whether we've done something horribly wrong and whether freeze was nicer than this or not. And that's actually really, really normal. The sympathetic energy is a normal way. When you, I don't know, when we saw that curve before, you actually have to sort of move through sympathetic to get to dorsal and back to vagal. So really normal that we end up working with practices that help complete the stress energy and work with that response, and we find more and more regulation over time. But very possible. Oh, Angie, I saw your hand shoot up.
Hi, Bex.
Hi.
Yeah, thank you for just saying what you just said, because I found at the beginning of today's session, I was in a bit of sympathetic, like I was more agitated feeling.
Yeah.
Because I actually had to book tickets to a concert this morning. And if any of you know about Ticketmaster, it's like a crazy thing trying to get a ticket. So I had all this like frantic energy. So when I did this, I found it really fascinating because they kind of like the freeze side, they kind of tried to mimic each other sometimes. So it was almost like my flow was bringing my freeze, and then they would go the same for a little bit, and then it would go agitated, and then it flow, and then but even on the flow side, it got sharp things sometimes. So it was almost like they were each trying to pull the other over. So I found that really fascinating because it shows how we can really influence what we're feeling. You know, each side can influence the other, so
Yeah.
it's about where you put your attention.
That's beautiful, Angie. Thank you for sharing that. And it's so interesting to also, when we think about mixed states, right? You know, we kind of are quick to try to segment ourselves or diagnose ourselves or say, this is the state that I'm in. And often it's quite mixed, as you said. Like often it's like, oh, it's a bit nuanced. Like at times I'm in flow and then I'm agitated again, and it kind of flows and they mingle together, and we really experience what that's like. And I love mixed states. You know, the state that I really thrive and work the best in isn't just ventral vagal, it's ventral and sympathetic. You know, I love a bit of sympathetic energy. It's not a bad thing. You know, so we can really, really get into creative flow and productivity when we have sympathetic but ventral vagal. The safety component of the ventral with the sympathetic energy is a beautiful thing. So yeah, thank you for highlighting that and for showing us that experience. Janet said that was 100% her experience as well. I'll just read. Mandy said, I came into the session late as I couldn't initially find how to get here, as this is my first time and I'm at work. Oh, I'm so glad you made it, Mandy. That would have been a fun way to come in, stressed. I came in feeling quite anxious. I'm now feeling heavier and calmer in my body in a good way and kind of tired. I guess I'm wondering how I now balance getting myself back into work but keep nicely regulated. So that's actually, that came at the perfect time of sometimes we get ourselves so deeply into either ventral vagal, so very regulated, or actually sometimes we end up in a combination of ventral and dorsal, which is just very relaxed and very surrender state. And I love that one too. Very great place for intimacy and all of that stuff, feeling safe and also feeling kind of not what am I trying to say? Yeah, just surrendered. So we can just upregulate, Mandy, if you might need a little bit of upregulation again, if you've gone too into that place. So movement is beautiful for that, getting up and bringing in some twists, bringing in some breath. I love the breath of Joy. I especially love it because I love Joy, who's here with us, one of our members, and it always makes me think of her. You could do a breath of joy, maybe do 3 of those if you do not have blood pressure or lightheadedness. If you don't know what a breath of joy is, I'm not going to stand up because you can't see me, but you stand up, you breathe in, inhale, 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 all in one breath, and exhale, allow your body to fold and bend at the hips. So do a few of those, do a little jiggle, think about something you're excited or driven about, engage your voice again, do some tapping that's a little bit more intense. Go have a cup of tea. Why is that always the thing I tell people to do? Have a decaf and just get the little bit of upregulation. Right. Lee said, I've missed a lot too, but please just said about the sympathetic energy as being good for getting moving, as getting things done. Guess it's recognizing your window of tolerance, yeah, as to when you go too far over and feel stressed, exactly. So we have to remember that sympathetic is not a bad thing. It's activation and mobilization. But when we live in a sympathetic dominant state, it has a lot of impact on our health. And we feel dysregulated. Sandy said the best thing my therapist said to me lately was that we would not be happy if we were in a ventral vagal all the time. I think it's good to remember. My goal is to have awareness around my states and not be afraid of the state I'm currently in. And that's exactly the point. You know, the point of any of this work is not to be completely regulated all the time. We need all those other states. We need to be able to be in it and to cope with it. And the more we're able to build our capacity to be with different emotions, that's what we want. It's nervous system resilience. It's not being regulated all the time. I've done it this work for 15 years. I am not regulated and ventral all the time. And that's absolutely normal. All right. So, okay, I think that seems like all the questions. Let me know, is anyone else here wanting to pop up and say something or share something? So for those who were here trialing it out, as you know, the membership is currently running with a lovely little $49 discount off any of the plans and week goodie bags. So I would love to welcome you in. You might have questions. So feel free, I'm going to be on Instagram today. So feel free to DM me. And if you'd just like to share your experience again or send in something, write me a message after this and let me know what you experienced in today's class, if you didn't feel like you could ask a question. So thank you all so much for your time, your energy, your vulnerability. I hope today served you in some way. And I look forward to seeing and chatting to you in the hub for those of you who are members. So go well, have a beautiful day, go have a cup of tea, and I'll see you soon.